When the French naturalist Henri Mohout stumbled upon the ruins of Angkor back in the 1860s, he was just blown away. And this quote, it just perfectly captures that feeling of awe, right? It's a feeling so powerful it can inspire people to do incredible things. But sometimes it inspires some incredible nerve. And that nerve, that audacity, is exactly what this story is all about. It's about a single brazen crime that backfired in the most spectacular way and ended up shaping a man's life and a nation's history in ways you just can't make up. Which brings us to our big question. I mean, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it? How does a guy caught red-handed looting a priceless ancient temple somehow become one of his country's most beloved cultural icons? Well, to figure that out, we've got to head back to the Roaring Twenties in Paris. Our story doesn't kick off in a steamy jungle. Nope. It starts in the smoky, bohemian cafes of Montmartre with a young, ambitious couple who are desperate to make a name for themselves. So let me introduce you to André and Clara Malraux. He was this magnetic 22-year-old dandy who was absolutely convinced he was going to be the next great French writer. And she was this brilliant, worldly intellectual. Together, they were basically the power couple of the Parisian avant-garde scene, super ambitious, super smart, and hungry for adventure. But here's the thing about ambition. It doesn't always pay the rent. After they lost all their money in a stock market crash, they cooked up a plan. It was a get-rich-quick scheme that was frankly equal parts brilliant and insane. They were going to go to French Indochina, chip a few statues off a remote temple, and sell them to an American collector for a fortune. Simple, right? Now, to really get this, you have to understand the world they were stepping into. Cambodia in 1923 was a French colony. For decades, European officials had basically been treating the country's heritage like a free-for-all, taking artifacts and claiming they were saving them. So the Malraux weren't exactly inventing the idea of looting Cambodia. And they had a very specific target in mind, Bante Sray. It was this stunning 10th century temple, famous for its intricate carvings in this beautiful pink sandstone. They'd done their research and found what they thought was a genius loophole. The temple had only recently been rediscovered and wasn't officially on the protected sites list. Their argument, it was technically abandoned property. So, with their target picked and their questionable legal excuse already, the couple packed their bags. They were leaving the cafes of Paris behind for the jungles of Cambodia, convinced they were about to pull off the score of a lifetime. And look how methodical this was. This wasn't just some smash and grab. First, they posed as researchers to get official papers. Then they suffered through a 2-day trek, hacking their way through the jungle. And then, with hammers and chisels, they just started tearing pieces off the temple walls. 7 major carvings, including 5 incredible statues of goddesses. They packed it all up, labeled the crates chemical products, and headed for the escape boat. But their plan had one fatal flaw. They totally underestimated the people on the ground in Cambodia who had actually dedicated their lives to protecting this art. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. It's a clash of 2 completely different worlds. On one side, you've got André Malraux, the Parisian intellectual who saw these sacred sculptures as a quick payday. And on the other, you have Georges Groslier. He was the director of the National Museum, born in Cambodia, and he was a fierce protector of Khmer heritage. Groslier had actually met Malraux earlier and got a really bad feeling, especially since Malraux kept asking how much different artifacts were worth. Groslier's gut feeling was spot on. A local official who was also suspicious had planted spies in Malraux's crew and tipped Groslier off, so he gets a warrant and races to intercept their steamboat. And of all days, it's Christmas Eve, when the authorities board the ship, find the crates, and just like that, the heist was over. The trial happened fast. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge found Malraux guilty and handed down a sentence that matched the crime: 3 years. 3 years in a colonial prison. For this ambitious young writer, this was it. Total and complete ruin. Or was it? This is the twist. Back in Paris, Clara launched a massive campaign. She got all the big names in French literature, famous authors, intellectuals, to sign petitions. They argued that it was a crime to let a genius like Malraux rot in jail over a few old stones from an abandoned temple. And it worked. The pressure was so intense that the sentence was suspended. Malraux was free to go. So, while the literary elites in Paris were celebrating, the people in Cambodia who actually saw what happened, They were absolutely disgusted. This quote from the wife of a top archaeologist pretty much sums it up. To them, the Moreaus weren't romantic adventurers, they were just arrogant thieves who got away with it. And this is where the story gets really bizarre. Moreau doesn't return to France in shame. He comes back as a kind of celebrity, this daring rogue. And what happens next? Well, it's almost unbelievable. It's like the whole experience lit a fire under him. Look at this timeline. The convicted art looter goes back to Indochina and starts an anti-colonial newspaper. He writes one of the great novels of the 20th century. He goes to Spain to fight fascists. He becomes a decorated hero in the French resistance. And then, the ultimate irony, he's appointed France's very first Minister of Cultural Affairs. The transformation is just staggering. But, and this is a really important but, that rogue never fully went away. Malraux spent the rest of his life building his own legend, often exaggerating his achievements. And he never, not once, apologized for what he did at Bonté-Sray. So, what do we do with a legacy this complicated? What were the real long-term ripple effects of this one crazy heist? Well, for many Cambodians today, the story still carries a sting. As Yu Chung says here, the fact that a Frenchman could just show up, steal Price's heritage, get caught, and walk away with no punishment, it sent a really clear message about colonial power, that Cambodia's treasures didn't really belong to Cambodia. And yet, here it is, the ultimate mind-bending irony of this entire story. The scandal created such an uproar internationally that it actually forced the French authorities to finally get serious about preserving the temple. The crime directly led to the full restoration of Bonté-Sray, saving this architectural masterpiece from crumbling back into the jungle. When you look back, Malraux's crime, as bad as it was, seems almost quaint compared to what came later. His was a one-time thing, and the art was recovered. Decades later, you had guys like Douglas Latchford, who ran these massive, industrial-scale trafficking rings, smuggling hundreds of artifacts out of Cambodia during times of war. It was a completely different level of plunder. Which leaves us right here with this incredibly tricky question. A selfish, criminal act accidentally resulted in the salvation of a world treasure. It's a story that just refuses to give us a simple hero or villain, and it makes you wonder, does a good outcome ever make a bad act okay?